Welcome to the EDOL 721 pre-webinar, and that's because this is something you'll be looking at and viewing right now prior to the actual webinar. So this is a pre-webinar presentation on how to use power in politics to influence positive change. Now, the first thing I'd really like to address, although my PowerPoint's not moving, is why a pre-webinar presentation? What the heck's going on here? Well, not most of you, but many of you may have experienced and may also be familiar with the term flipped classroom. And flipped classroom basically turns things around. Instead of going to the classroom, such as the virtual webinar, to get information, you're going to be coming to the virtual webinar when we hold it together to discuss learning and basically develop shared meaning amongst yourselves. So you're going to be developing your own learning at that point. But to do that, it's necessary to do some things first. For instance, we need to introduce some concepts and talk about them. So I want to do that very briefly with this recorded webinar. But I also have a little bit of homework for you, but not a lot of reading, just some cherry picking that you could do very easily. So then you're going to review and reflect some of what I say tonight and some of these short little snippets that you're going to go through and just sort of ponder and reflect on. And then you're just going to let your old subconscious mind work. I'm a big believer in put some things in and then sleep on it, so to speak. Let it roll around. And it gathers some meaning and it gets some context within who we are, what we are in our previous learnings and our previous knowledge and experience. And then last of all, you'll come together in the actual virtual webinar that you sign up for, and hopefully you have gone and signed up to the site on the Blackboard where it says webinars, and you have signed up and selected the night you're going to be there. It'd be nice if you could spread yourselves out a little bit, so there's like 7 or 8 at one, 7 or 8 at the other. It'll make much better for our development of shared meeting and discussions. So that's why we're doing this. Now, I'm not going to be too long tonight. I'm going to get moving. The real, I think, power of it comes in the review and reflect, letting the subconscious work, and then the last, which is when we get together and share. So when you come to webinar, you'll be talking. You'll get some prompts, and you'll be sharing on those prompts, and we'll be developing a shared meeting together. I will be too. We all will. It's always new learning for me every time, no matter what theoretical concept we're going over or how many times I've dealt with it, talked about it, written about it, or whatever. So let's talk a little bit about our topic then, which is power in politics and influencing change. So up here in the right-hand corner, this is kind of the vision people get when they say politics. Right now, it's hard not to, is it not? I mean, the debates are all going on. Democrats, Republicans, every talking head in the world is talking day and night. Every news feed, Twitter, whatever it might be, Tumblr, you name it, Facebook, it's just crazy. And I don't know about you. Maybe you like that. You kind of get into it, and that's fine. For me, it's gotten so uncivil over the years that I basically just stay away from it, and I try to read and become informed, and that's how I deal with politics. But the key is for our learning and for this course is we're not talking about the talking heads. We're not talking about politicians trying to get your vote and this negative image that so many people have of politicians. And we all do. You may not have a negative vision of the one you like, but how about the one you don't like? I bet you have negative images of that one. So we all do, but that's not what we're talking about. So try to just get that image out of your head. We're talking about politics and power as a leader in a constructive manner. It doesn't mean it can't be destructive, but we're talking about politics and power in a constructive manner. So a lot of times when you hear the word power, you notice I've highlighted it here. That's out of context, but I've highlighted it. Some people think that's a dirty word, or they don't like it, or they think it's mean-spirited. All right, not something that a good transformational leader would use power over people. Well, the fact of the matter is, power is extremely important to your transformational leadership. Extremely important to leading change. If you think about power as a word being on a continuum, like a line continuum, if power was on one end of that continuum, what would be at the other end? Well, if power is something you had on one end, on the other end it would be maybe the opposite, like maybe being impotent. So you don't want to be an impotent leader. You don't want to be a leader that cannot bring about change, that cannot lead others. You want to be a powerful, transformational leader. but you want to be transformational in the fact that you're one that's relationship oriented, that you're focused on people, and that you're empowering others, not bullying them. Okay? So nobody wants to be impotent. You want to be a powerful transformational leader. You want to be able to deliver that vision for your organization. So keep that in mind as you're going through this course. That's what we're talking about here. This is another quote from Pfeiffer, in that it says that it is the organizational politicking which facilitates organizational change and adaptation to the environment. And, that's probably true. We have to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that people do to politic and to make things happen within the organization. So those are two different looks. One is the one about power, and the other is the look about using that to politic and make things happen. So let's talk a little bit more about power, because that's the one I think that really tends to maybe cause some emotion or lead people in the wrong direction. The classic research in power was French and Raven. French and Raven's 6 sources of power. And they're listed here for you. You can read them: coercive, reward, legitimate, referent, expert, and informational power. Now, there's a number of power frameworks, sources of power, but almost all of them go back to this classic work by French and Raven. And I've given some sites there if you want to go back and look at it. But I'm also going to be, also have added a handout that you can look at that briefly discusses them that I pulled off of the internet. But bottom line, coercive power is when you try to force somebody to do something. Reward power, hey, we're all into reward power. I mean, most of us work for reward. We're working for money or some satisfactional value, something along that on Maslow's hierarchy of satisfaction. But power for reward power for a leader is that you have the ability to give something to somebody that they want. You have some power over them because they want it. The guy gal who's hiring has power because they have the ability to hire you. She can say yay or nay. Legitimate power is another one. Legitimate power is basically based on your position. I call it positional power, who you are. If you're a superintendent of schools, you have positional power. If you're the dean of the School of Education at Bremen, you have positional power. If I'm full-time faculty and you're instructor, I have positional power. Now, I'm obligated to use it ethically and morally, but the fact of the matter is you have that power by position. And that's legitimate power. Referent power is kind of like it sounds. It's like people want to be like you. You're a reference point for them. It's oftentimes referred to as charismatic or power of charismatic or power of charisma. Pardon me. So that's that one. And then expert power is just what it sounds like. You have a knowledge or skill. You're an expert in an area, and that makes you powerful because other people don't know that, and so they need you. And the last one, which was added a few years later, actually by Raven, is informational power. And this is like being persuasive, where you can connect with people and persuade them and get them to follow and do things. Typically, this power, by the way, is linked to other areas like legitimate power or referent power. Now, notice the little call out on the right hand side. It says, I want you to review the PDF titled French and Raven's Forms of Power and pages 496 through 503 of the article titled Political Applications of the Psychology of Interpersonal Influence and Social Power. So those are 2 attachments that come with this announcement and with this video. So you can take a look at those. It's not a lot of reading, and you don't even have to read for content and underline everything. You can just sort of read them through and scan them. And then I've got some reflection thoughts for you at the end of this presentation that'll help guide you. So let's take a look at the 7 personal qualities that build power. And these come from Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer's interesting. Jeffrey Pfeiffer's text gets some different types of reviews. I like it. I think he's being quite honest. He's a very bright man, highly accomplished individual. And he's just saying, hey, look, let's be honest about this thing. I mean, somebody's got to toot your horn, and it better be you. Because if you're not doing it, somebody else is defining who you are. So you've got to embrace power. You've got to embrace moving yourself up the ladder, if you will, and making yourself known and so on. So I don't want to take away from this book. You're going to read that. But basically, he's telling us that, people who rise to great heights, people who are highly accomplished in life, they're really operating from two fundamental dimensions. One of them is will, and one of them is skill. So they have a tremendous will or drive to do things, and then they have the skills, or they need to develop the skills to supplement that drive and to augment it so that they can reach great heights in their leadership roles. So that's what he talks about, and I've asked you to read in a call out you see on the right hand side, pages 42 through 54 in the Pfeiffer text. So just a snippet of text, but it'll give you a feel for these, and it'll give you some knowledge and some things to kick around that subconscious mind, so that when you come to the discussion at the virtual webinar, you can start developing some shared meaning for yourself and along with everybody else is there participating. So look these 7 over, if you would please, and think about the context that I've tried to develop for you tonight. And Pfeiffer, of course, the whole text is one you want to read, and I would suggest in the first week or 2 to get that done, because you start having assignments in week 3 and 4, and then it gets pretty busy for you. And also the political intelligent leader by White, Harvey, and Kemper, same thing. Those 2 texts you want to read as soon as possible. It'll really help you throughout the rest of the course. So let's move to the next one. Let's talk about trust, because trust is, according to the politically intelligent leader, trust is, and this is a quote at the top, the most important and universally needed strategy. So that's a pretty big statement. I believe that to be true as well. I spent many years of my life in higher ed as a professor talking about trust, and I spent many years as a leader in education, superintendent of schools, talking about building trust, developing trust, nurturing trust, because trust is so very, very important. And remember, trust has nothing to do with about what you say as much as it has to do with what you do. It's all about behaviors. It's all about your behavior. Lots of people say, "Oh, trust me," or "Yeah, I can be trusted," or "I will do you right," or "Don't worry, you'll never get a check from me you can't cash," and so on. But over time, people will realize right away that, well, that's just not true. Or someone says, "Well, yeah, you can share with me confidentially," and then the next thing you know, they're telling everybody in the world. All right, so there's a disconnect between what they say and their behavior and what they do. And once you build trust with people, it takes tremendous time to do that. It takes behavior over behavior to build the trust. All it takes is one negative behavior, one behavior that screams out, "Wow, wait a minute, I don't think this person can be trusted." And when that happens, you lose all trust, and it takes forever to build the trust back. So this is a very important concept you want to spend some time pondering and reading more about. And I provided you with an article. If you see the call out up there, you notice I provided you with an article from the Harvard Business Review on the enemies of trust, just to kind of spur your thinking. And also I'm asking you to read pages 9 through 12 of the Political Intelligent Leader. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about how the politically intelligent leader is defined according to your text. First quote, it says that one who uses a moral compass to lead the organization in the right direction while considering the wants, needs, values, motivations, and emotions of followers and stakeholders. In other words, all this topic of conversation about the use of power and to build trust and to use these 7 personal qualities to build power and so on. It's all encompassed in the fact that you're doing this to move in the right direction, that you are considering the human relationships, that you care about people, that you're authentic in your motivation and your wants and your needs and your values for the organization, for the stakeholders, for the followers. If you lose sight of that, there's no trickster to this. If you aren't passionate about that, and that isn't what your driving force is to begin with, then you're not going to be a transformational leader. And in all likelihood, you're going to struggle in leadership roles if that's not a focus of yours. That's my experience, and that's my understanding of a tremendous amount of literature. The next one is talking about the political intelligent leader, and it says needs to understand internal territory and external environment, and how it impacts key players, issues, culture. And I've added the highlights to that. In other words, once you have the right moral compass for doing this, then you need some strategies. My wife used to tease me all the time about my leadership roles, and I would come home and tell her things that were going on. I'd love to share with her. I think she just listened because she cares and loves me. I don't think it was all that important to her, but sometimes she would tease me. She said, "Well, it sounds like you're manipulating people." And the reason she would say that is because I was telling her of a strategy that I used that worked, or some structuring device that I used at a meeting, and it brought people around and brought them together. But I wasn't manipulating people. I was using my politically intelligent leadership skills, strategies I've learned, structuring devices I've learned through doctorate program, through experience, through reading, through literature, through research, and putting them to practical application. Many of you are doing that right now from what you've learned from this doctoral program. And you go, wow, this is powerful stuff. It works. And it does. And you're not doing anything wrong. You're not manipulating people. You're leading. You're leading by example. And you're leading by using powerful strategies and techniques. So, what are some of the techniques or strategies that you can use? Now, you'll be delighted that by doing this pre-webinar, I'm not going to lecture to you on all these things and bore you. Here they are. They're in the textbook. They're in the first few chapters, and you can peruse them as you want. You really don't need to read about them to participate in our webinar in the first week, because I think they're pretty much self-explanatory. But look them over. So look the list over. They're in the book. You can look them over in the book, or you can just look at this slide and think about it. Okay? But there's a number of strategies because the politically intelligent leader is really a pragmatic book, a book on how to go about being a politically intelligent leader. It starts with these strategies, the external and the internal strategies, and there is overlap in some of these. Well, believe it or not, we are coming now to the end of the pre-webinar recording. So I want to go back very quickly, just to go back right to there. I want to remind you that this is one thing that I've asked you to do, and I provided these documents for you. You have the text, and I provided the documents for you. All right? And then here's another one. Just a reminder that you need to take a look at these page numbers in Pfeiffer's text. And here's another one. Now, it looks like a lot, but when you see them, I don't think you'll find it that much. It's not for doctoral reading, and you ought to be able to do it without too much struggle prior to the webinar. So, and then check these out, okay? And after you've checked out the materials, I'm going to ask you to kind of just reflect on them, just give some thought, and here's some guiding questions. And I'm going to provide you the PowerPoint, so you'll have it. I want you to think about French and Raven's 6 sources, or sometimes called forms of power. They call it sources. Forms came later. Like I said, there's many other frameworks. All right. And can you recall a time maybe when you experienced someone or yourself using one of the or more of these sources of power? You know, what did it look like? How did it feel? What sources do you perceive you tend to use as a leader now, or are there ones you want to know more about? Just ponder those, reflect on them. Pfeiffer's 7 personal qualities that build power, are some that you think are strengths you have now, or some you're going to want to work on. What do you think of the whole Pfeiffer point of view, where he's coming from in his framework, in his textbook? If you have a scale of 1 to 10, like a Likert or Likert, say it either way you want, scale, where 1 was none and 10 was excellent, how would you rate the level of trust in your organization and your division? All right? But when you think of a team or a situation that you felt high trust, can you identify, and I'm sorry that it looks as though that the PowerPoint when it uploaded it left off. Can you identify some of the characteristics of trust that we gave you, or some of those behaviors involved in that? So these are just some things to think about. These are not necessarily the prompt questions that we'll be discussing, but they'll follow along this line. All right. I hope that this has been helpful to get you jump started. I believe if you take a look at those readings that I've asked you to do, that you'll wind up at the actual webinar. You'll enjoy yourself with some great conversation, and we'll have a good time, and we'll probably get done far before the 2 hours that are scheduled for it. All right. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you virtually soon.